Hello, once again, welcome to Get Good, episode 5, Mods Face the Music. And I am your host, Master Illidor de Bettigrain, originally of the West Kingdom and now in Athelmark. So the way we like to start this is around the room. Everyone's going to introduce themselves and basically talk about who they are, just a little bit, like under a minute, who you are and why people should listen to you. So I'm getting pinged by people, so sorry, who want to also join in. So on that note, Cameron, Giovanni, who are you and why should people listen to you?
Hi, I am Giovanni Orato. I've been playing in the society my entire life. My mom was the first Doña of Artemisia. I am a second generation Don, as well as the sixth Master of Defense in my kingdom. I've been fighting since I was 14, and I don't know why people should listen to me, but I've got a lot to say. Just let me tell you. That's about it, really.
Devious.
David, fourth mod.
Davius, you're going to have to speak a little closer to your mic because we can't really hear you too well. There you go.
Hey, Davius St. Jacques, fourth mod of the Kingdom of Tarmaris, originally of the East Kingdom, lived in a bunch of different kingdoms.
Guido, what about you?
My name is Gribaldo d'Aquila, Order of the Laurel, Order of the White Scarf, and Master of Defense. I was the sixth Master of Defense in Antir, and the first fencing laurel in Antir.
Excellent. Ibn Jalal, what about you?
First white scarf of Lockhart, the first fencing laurel in Lockhart. For a long time, I was the only fencing in Lockhart until we actually made one. Made the mods.
Just to let you know, there you go. Keep going.
And general all-round historical fencing, Italian, whatever it is I do.
Ibn, you're going to have to, I think, work on the feedback there a little bit. It's cutting out again. So sorry. Brad, you need to change your name. Cyrano, who are you and why should people listen to you?
It says Brad Kramer, but in the SCA, I am.
Oh, Brad's going to talk.
Hildebrand. Type that. I'm Rudy Ace. I was a student to Master Nikolai Pilipatis. Been fencing since I was 18. I'm the 7th Master of Defense in Meridies. Completely underrated kingdom, if you ask me, but I'm a little biased.
Alan, who are you?
Fourth MOD of Callantyr. Started 11 years ago when we had a group of people that came to Lily's War and said, hey, there's this new thing, cut and thrust, you might be interested. Went and bought some equipment on the way home.
Nice. Cyrano, who are you?
Hey, I'm Karnak. I'm on trend with some people here. I was a fencing laurel before I became a Master of Defense. I'm one of the premiers in Drakenwald. And even though rapier is my main thing, I'm super interested in the 15th century. So anything about two-handed swords, sword and buckler. I spent some time translating a book by Pietro Monte, The Collectanea. So I spent a lot of time working on his everything up to poleaxe. So if it's a weapon, you can fight with it. I want to fight with it. And I'm mostly here because I'm interested. I've been fencing for about 20 years and I still need to get more good. So I'm here to soak up the knowledge.
Excellent. So just about a little bit about me, I am Illidor de Bettigrain. I am the first Master of Defense of the West and one of the premier Masters of Defense of the West. And I, just to brag a little bit on who I am, I have won 5 rapier, kingdom level rapier championships. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here and like to do these things. I want to pass our knowledge along to other people. And since this is the musical episode, very first question, what is your fight song? Cameron, you're laughing. Giovanni, you're laughing, so you're it. What's your fight song?
I don't really have a fight song. I just like singing songs. I don't know. There's a lot of times I'll just sing as I'm stabbing people. That's my fight song. I don't know. I used to piss off a lot of people at Estrella because I'd be singing on the lines and they tried to stab me and then I just stabbed them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I hate you.
It.
Yeah, I hate you. Anyone else want to answer this one? What is your fight song? Guido.
Mine changes. It depends on who I'm fighting and how I feel that day. But generally speaking, it's by Michael Jackson.
Is there a specific Michael Jackson song?
Not necessarily. Generally something more upbeat and with a higher tempo.
Okay. Davius, do you have one? It's not working.
Street Fight, Adam Jensen. There's actually an entire playlist. It almost got outlawed at the last Q in the East Kingdom I fought at because Lilius, the KRM, was my pool's marshal, and she's like, I might not be able to let you keep listening to whatever you're listening to because like in between rounds you're walking around, everybody's happy, smiley, Davies that everybody knows, and then you stop before you fight, you listen to this music, and then you go out there and you murder somebody, and I don't think that's fair. There's something in there that I think is wrong. So yeah, I do definitely have different songs. I would never fight with my pods in because that would be unsafe. And so I have never been active fighting and listening to music ever. That's not safe. But yeah, music is a big part of who I am in my mood. So yeah.
I tell my kids all you can do is all you can do.
Hey, Nicholas, do you have a fight song?
It's either Invincible by OK Go or
Good one.
I Said Knock You Out by LL Cool J.
Oh, if DMX comes on, you're dead. Like,
Ooh,
I love
yeah.
that
Don't let me
one.
hear
I
DMX.
love that one. Cernak.
Yeah, Jump Around, House of Pain. More like walk-in music. I'm coming to get ya.
That's great. Alan, do you have one?
This is not the way my brain works.
That's okay. Ibn Jalal. No?
Not really. Yeah, not really. Yeah. Worst I ever had to do was actually seeing everything I was doing to the tune of Bait Shark. The Baroness was evil.
All right. I think that's everyone. Brad, did I hit you?
Oh, so I wanted to say Wistrick does this thing at one of the events where you actually have to pick your walk-up song. They do it Friday Night Fights. I want to say it's
Castle
Wars. Although we've done some other ones. I think we did one at Fool's War too.
Nice.
But you actually it's like being a pro wrestler. You have to pick your song because they're gonna play at least 15-minute clip of it as you walk up for your fight.
Nice. Generally for me, it is whatever song I most listened to recently that is pretty like upbeat that I'm going to. But as of late, it has been Backstreet Boys' Back Tonight. That's really been my go-to. And if I'm really mad or I really I need to get in the mood, I will listen to Liar by Henry Rollins. For some reason, that's just a good one to get me going. So, all right. So the next question I would like to ask is, what was your path? How did you get good? What was the things that you did? Anyone? All right, Guido.
So I came from a modern fencing background and started SCA fencing after injury took me out of modern competition. So, and Mostly I was using it as more of a rehab than anything else, wanting to get back into competition, but that just wasn't going to happen because of an ACL, MCL tear. So my path from that point was just focus on what I needed to do and keep my motions as minimal as possible and try to dominate my opponent. By dominate, I don't mean to push them around, but sort of drop my sword on top of them and make them react to me. So that's what I concentrated on. It was just one fight at a time, slug it out as much as possible, and teach as much as possible. I found by teaching, it threw me back to my basics. How do you move? How do you step? How do you throw an attack? How do you defend? How do you use the list field to your advantage? So it was very, very methodical and very mathematical almost. It was very precise. I was very careful. And I watched a lot of videos of fighting, of me fighting specifically, and a lot of other people fighting so that I could see what's the next thing that everybody wants to do? What's the next fad in attacks? So that I can try to predict that and come up with a counter as soon as possible.
I find that like watching your own videos is both great and incredibly disappointing at the same time, right?
Because you see what you got away with, or
Most of the time, like, yes. Why am I leaning my head so forward? Why is my foot that way? Actually, I'm going to, we started a Facebook group for terrible.
I got it.
What is it?
Shameless lack of form. Give me a second, I'll post the link.
Great. I highly recommend everyone to look at Shameless Lack of Form and post your terrible, terrible pictures up there. It is great fun to, and also a great learning opportunity for everyone. Don't do that. Don't put your arm straight up in the air like that. Don't throw your shot before you have finished taking your step, which is mine. All right.
You're not my mod.
Sorry. All right. Who else wants to talk about how they got good? Alan, you.
I started fencing 11 years ago when Callantyr started. Before that, I had 15 or so years with Rattan. I think probably, and I live in a rural area where the next fencer is 2 hours that way or 2 hours that way. So I practice at events and I practice on my own with just repeated shots and multiple drills as I try to avoid getting bored. But I think my number one advantage is I'm in decent shape. And while some people are still trying to figure out how to get their armor off, I'm able to keep going and just get more time in. At 64, I'm finding it harder to do than it used to be, but you keep chugging.
I believe it ends November 1st.
Anyone else want to talk about how they got good?
I got something.
We've got Giovanni first, then Davius, and then Lockhack and Druckenwald.
I'll be short and sweet. The thing is sword in hand time.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest pet peeve is somebody says, well, I've been fencing for 10 years. Okay, but there was a nice 5-year gap there. There were 3 years there where I didn't really fight. You weren't fighting for 10 years. You might have been participating in this since then, but you weren't fighting for 10 years. Sword in hand practice is the only time that really counts.
Right.
So practice and make sure you're doing correct practice, because if you're learning bad habits, bad form, you're not going to get any better.
Davius.
I fought a lot. Like a lot. Like Marshall's like, get off the field, we want to go home a lot. And I traveled and fought people in different places because I didn't want to be in East Kingdom or a mid-realm.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of people who got stabbed in the face pretty quickly because they looked at me like, oh, well, he's from here, he's going to fight like this, and we're dead 15 seconds later. That's not what I did. Even when I traveled around, I lived in New York, I lived in Primaris, just fight as many people as you possibly can and learn as many different and then put together what you want. And that's the thing that I always try to tell people. I can't help you get past a certain level until you know how you want to finish the fight. You know how you want to prosecute your fights, like what you want to get out of fights and how you want to move through them. Once you have that goal, I can teach you things that will make you better at the things.
Davius, make sure you're close to your microphone. You're still breaking up.
When you have that plan, when you have that final goal, I can teach you things that will make you better at the stuff to make you able to do that. But until you know how you want to do this, I can't take you past a certain point. And that's why you just have to, like Giovanni said, have your sword in your hand. Go out there and stab people, because that's how you learn what's fun for you or how you want to play, or what works with what you've got.
Right.
You can't be Illidor, you can't be me, you can't be Giovanni. Oh, you can't, because you're not. But you can be the best version of you. You can do Davius type stuff, like you can do Giovanni type stuff. But it has to be how you need to do it.
All right.
The only way to do that is sword in hand.
Ibn Jalal.
I started under a professional fencing master. And then it was not just once a week, it was once a week with the fencing master. And then we had 1 to 2 times a week an SCA practice. And there was a group of 4 of us who were basically the core group, all working together, sucking it up, going, okay, we're going to suck at some of this. We're going to work on what we're bad at. And we spent a lot of time working on what we were bad at to make it good. But it's without that core group of 4, there's no way I'd have gotten anywhere I am now without them.
Shernak.
Hey, yeah, it's a common theme. You got to fence a lot. And thinking back on it, I travel a lot. In Drachenwald, we're very spread out. We've got lots of different countries, there are barriers. So a lot of it is, for me, was just traveling, getting to place I could fence people. And then specifically what helped, there was kind of a few things I'd say at different stages. At the beginning of my fighting, when everyone is better than me and it sucks a lot of it was just remembering to anchor every time I did something well, or I had a good result, even if I didn't win. So I just do this little thing. I'd like take this point on my finger and just press the button every time I had a good feeling on the fencing field. And then when I went out again, before I went to fence, I'd press that button. So I kind of like trained my brain to look for what was working, because at the beginning it was psychological. I wasn't going to win much, but I would do my best.
Mm-hmm.
Later, what really helped me actually was working through kind of progressions, period technique. I remember when I was learning sword and buckler work from Master Gwilm from Eitenveld. First time I fought him, I got toasted. Second time I fought him, I'd been working on Marazzo progressions for like 2 or 3 months, and I could fight. And it put things together for me. It wasn't just 1 move or 2 moves. It was, I knew how to move from position to position. And more recently, there comes a point when you're good, you become the best local fencer. And then there's a challenge, you're above your local peer group. So it's finding ways to challenge yourself. So lately what I've been doing is, like, I've been going to a lot of HEMA events, because in Drachenwald, there's more good high-level HEMA tournaments near me than there are SCA tournaments. But also getting my local fencers to do something like attack me with rubber-headed spears, so I can practice against like intense lunges. So you gotta find a way to push your envelope progressively. Not too much so you get pissed off, but enough that it's a little uncomfortable, and still enjoy when you make progress. So. But fence lots, that's most of it.
Brad, I think you're the last person other than me.
I can definitely build off what Kernak said. As far as when I was 19, I thought I was pretty good. Turns out I was just a big fish in a little pond. When we started the club, I got really good really fast compared to my fellow students. So getting out there and traveling, we practice. Pre-pandemic, we practiced 3 to 4 days a week, and that's average. And so we were able to turn out a lot of really high quality fencers in a short amount of time by comparison to the, when I was brought up in the SCA, it was, you had your Sunday practice, and then maybe there might be someone there who did a practice during the week. And then not only how often you practice, but also wanting to get better really drove me to, like, if I want to get better now, I have to make my students better. And it gets to the point where it's hard for me to lay a touch on my students. So, yeah.
Having that core group's really useful. For me, it was instantly loving it the second that I got a sword put in my hand and hitting someone with it. That was first week they didn't let me hit anyone, and then the second week I hit someone, and that was like, yes, I want to do this. And then it was a lot of, yeah, you're all laughing because you all felt that you were like, yes, swords, and I get to hit people with this, and I don't go to jail. This is great. So in my area, I was very lucky that we had a number of practices within like 2 hours. So it was not unusual for me to start fencing and going to 1 to 2 practices a week and then going to an event. So there was almost, and one of the things I think really helped me was fighting in tournaments. So I got into the tourney mindset very quickly because I started doing that almost from the beginning. So I started fighting in tournaments almost right away, and then learning the mindset of how to fence and how to be in a tournament really helped me get good pretty quickly. All right. So the next question I have for the group is, a lot of you just discussed that the best way to get better is to go and fight people. But we are in this middle of this thing called the pandemic, and a lot of us don't have people that we live with that we can go fight with, and a lot of us live in areas where we're not just being able to fight very much. So what is your best advice for everyone who is at home and unable to practice with others? Twist, because I've asked this before. You are not allowed to repeat something someone else has said. Yes.
Can I go first?
No. No, because you've been here before. So no, you're not going first, Giovanni. I will let Alan go first because he's at the bottom of my row for me. So Alan, you get to go first.
Okay.
What is the thing someone can do that at home to get better during the time of pandemic?
Well, I mentioned already the conditioning. Leading up to not lilies back in the spring, I set 100 miles as the goal here, walking, running, or some combination of both, and was able to do that in about 4 weeks. So starting September 1st, I'm doing another 100. So today saw another. So today's 12. This is what, the third day of the month. So just getting out on the road and getting some conditioning in. I also am doing construction around the house, so it's moving bricks and railroad ties and shoveling and just general physical conditions. So when you tell your body to do it, it will go do what you ask it to do.
All right, I like it. Let's see, Ibn Jalal, because you are also very far away, so I'll give the next one to you.
Got a couple of ones, but I think one of the best pieces of advice I've ever seen came from my fencing master. And he basically said to one of my fellow students, you're having trouble holding the sword up, so get used to having it in hand. As you walk around the house with the sword in hand, turn on the light switches with the sword point. Open doors with the sword point. Disengage around the edge of the door as it opens. it was basically doing everything with sword in hand just to get people used to having that sword in hand, getting used to the weight.
All right. So our other faraway person, Cernak, how are you? What advice do you have?
Yeah, I think you got to define what's useful to train and what's counterproductive to train. Trying to practice any kind of defenses against attacks or imaginary attacks, I think, can be quite wasteful because you're not having a real cue to trigger off. I think you can work a lot on measure. You can work on like drills where you're practicing getting just your edge of measure, getting in and out of that, moving around like a pal or a target. You can practice the basic moves of your technique. If you're doing like Gigante's rapier, you can just mount a sword on a bookshelf, come into measure, engage it, practice the move, watch yourself in video. So you can do offensive maneuvers pretty well. I'm not sure it's useful to try and imagine you're being attacked and move against it because it's not that realistic. And watch your old videos if you got any old videos.
You're only supposed to pick one, man. That might have been someone else's.
Darn,
Now you like jumped two.
sorry.
That might have been mine. I'm just saying. That was the one I was going to pick. All right, Davius, since you were back, the question that we asked was, what is the one thing people who are at home and don't have practice partners, what can they do? And the added twist, as I said, is that you could not repeat the advice already given. And we
I was here. I just took my camera off because I was stuffing my face. I didn't need to see it. Plus, I was fighting the cat. Like I didn't need to see all of that too.
No, cats are
I'm not allowed to have food without.
We are pro cat here at Get Gooder.
Yes.
What is your?
In that case, here's Apollo.
Oh.
Are you asking me to give ways to get good? Like while we can't. Okay.
Yes.
One way to get good,
I
yeah.
can't go back to cardio. I can't go back to the practice. Intaking more knowledge is always watch videos because when you as a human being can critically consider the things that you're reading, the plans that these people have that they have tried to put into action. When you read why 1 is 1 and 2 is 2, and then you adapt that to what you're trying to do to other people, that's something you can do at any point in time. Like, you don't need to be on the field for that. And doing it outside of fencing, in times like this, making it part of how your brain works, makes it faster when you're trying to do it on the field. So for me, it's been a lot of reading, a lot of video looking at, a lot of talking to people who I trust their knowledge, and internalizing a lot of the information, and putting that into the quote unquote battle.
Gotcha.
All those things.
Nicholas, you're up.
So I'll build off of what Kronak said about having something to actually. People talk a lot about Pell work, and the typical SCA Pell is what, a 4x4 straight up, right? It's not very realistic. If you were to maybe put an old fencing jacket on it and a mask and maybe build some sort of apparatus where it can actually hold a sword, then you've got something a little bit more useful training tool to work with. And I think being able to find these tools, so if the stipulation is you can't go out in public and fence another person, and you aren't lucky enough to live with someone you can fence with, then you kind of need to bring the tools you need to home. Whether it's a weight set or a Pell, to utilize online resources like meetings like these.
All right, Giovanni.
I just posted in the chat section a link to the Virtual Academy of Rapier Facebook group, where they are doing tons of videos just like this that you can peruse. That way you may not necessarily have a physical partner there, but you can take other classes like this.
Mine is going to be a little cerebral. I found one of the best things that worked for me when I was coming up in my journey was to write and journal about fencing. Like just write about what I have learned and what I want to learn and where I want to go forward and the lessons of that day. And I really think that that will in fact help your training if you are doing it deliberately, you're thinking about it and writing it down, right? That's a part of the scientific method, right? F around, find out, and then lastly, write it down. So I really think that people should be thinking about their practices and what they're learning and writing it down. And that helps a lot of people cement it in their mind. The act of like actually writing it on paper very much helped me cement some of the ideas that I had in my mind.
Can I ask what specifically are you writing down?
So when I first started doing this, I would write about every single practice I had, what I learned, what I wanted to do next. And then I would also write about the fights that I had. Like I would be able to write down like who I fought, how they fought against me. Now when I'm writing about fencing, it is primarily a lot of it of like where I want to go and what I want to do. I also, when I am taking a class, I absolutely write notes down while I'm taking it. Now, I'll be honest with you, 90% of those notes are uneligible later. But the fact that I'm writing it down at the time, oh, there's a kitty. The fact that I'm writing it down at the time helps cement it in my brain. Just like when I'm taking a class, if I'm writing it down, it helps me remember. The act of writing it helps me remember what I was feeling at the time, what I was thinking at the time, and helps me remember more and more about the class. So we actually had a couple of questions. I think we had one question here. I got this one. This is a good one. What is the single most important bit of advice for the mental game? All right, we've got Guido.
One of the biggest things that I find is I have a lot of people who they lose a fight or they make a mistake in a fight and that contaminates the rest of the day for them.
Yes.
My biggest piece of advice is the fight that just happened didn't happen. Even if you won, lost, even if you blew a shot, it didn't happen. Forget it, move on. All that's important is what's coming up next. So that's my big thing is just stay in the moment and don't think about what happened before and don't try to predict. Just stay in the moment.
That's pretty much my exact advice, except not looking backwards, but looking forwards, right? Like just one of the worst fights I've ever had was like, I was trying to like game out all the people I had to fight and when I wanted to fight against them, like that was terrible. Just fight the fight that is in front of you. You just have one mission right now. It's to destroy the other person that's in front of you. Just go forth and do that and worry about the rest later.
In a tournament that I want to win, I don't even watch the fighting.
Oh, really?
I don't even bother because if I watch the fighting, it makes me second guess the techniques that I know I can do.
Mm-hmm.
So I walk out to every single fight having not watched anything. I will keep a sort of vague reference of what's going on, but I'm not examining fights. I don't care. It's not important because anything that happens on the field right now, I'm not going to be able to fix my game to deal with that anyway. There's just not enough time.
I don't agree with that, but I want to hear from other people so I'm not dominating conversations. Anyone else? Davius, remember to get close to your mic.
I think I'm a little weird because everybody has a file in my head. Like every fight I've had with you, what you've done when I do this, what you've done when I do that, what you do when I show you something. And I track that and I keep that in my head. And like Guido says, no, I don't, I fight the fight in front of you. Like I'm not, but I do know that I will remember that if I showed you this, your response was that. So at some point, I'm going to show you something that looks like that,
But it won't be.
your response, and then I'm going to murder you. There are people who have been hitting me with shots for 4 and 5 years that I could have stopped easily because I wanted them to feel confident that at some point when I needed to kill them, that they could throw that shot and win, and then I killed them in the face. Because it's a mental game for me. Like, I understand completely the concept of not fighting, not worrying about other fights, because that's what gets me killed too. Like, a lot of times when I overthink, but that's how I work, I guess, is the thing. Like, I need that Rolodex. But mentally, you have, like he said, I feel like shaking off the results is important. Because for me, a good fight isn't just a fight that I won. If I had a plan and I went in and I was able to execute my plan, I had a good fight. Whether I win or lost, if my plan was just a terrible plan and it got me murdered, okay. But it was still a good fight because I was able to prosecute my plan. Now I just know I need a better plan next time.
Giovanni.
One of the things I had to work with one of my cadets was getting her to the point where she understood that just because she didn't win, it didn't mean she fought badly. Like, she had to understand that it was a good fight. The person might have just been better. Her plan might not have been great, but it was still a good fight. And that's a big, like you said, people get down on themselves when they lose, and it's not, and it throws everything off. You might have done well. They just did better. That's sorry.
That's all right. You're great.
No, that's kind of exactly what I was going to kind of talk about. Is a lot of people talk about how getting into the zone, getting into the headspace, that mental game. But I think one of the most important things that a lot of times we forget is the mental game of being okay with losing. There are 4 rules that I fight with. Number 1 is fight honorably. Number 2 is have fun. Number 3 is learn something. And number 4 is there's always another tournament. The pandemic has really kind of kicked that one in the butt, but for the most part, there's always going to be another tournament. There's going to be another Queen's Champion. There's going to be another Rose Tourney. So just being okay with losing, and it sounds kind of cocky because we're some of the better fighters, and part of being a mod is you don't suck too much. But the biggest thing is that the mental game, the biggest hurdle for me, because I'm a cocky SOB and I really pushed myself hard, was being okay with losing. And so I think that's part of the mental game people need to work on a bit more.
Anyone else? Nicholas.
I think Davey is.
Ibn, like you started, let's keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, you said, I think a large part of it is what David's touched on. You've got to go in with a plan. And this is where a lot of people fail when they first start out. They've got no plan what they're going to do when they get on the field as a beginner. And that's where the mental games, and that's where they really spiral down, is because they just get hit and get hit and get hit, and they go, oh, I'm no good at this. Whereas if you go in with the plan, and the plan doesn't have to be I'm going to win. The plan can be as simple as I'm going to make it as hard as possible for these bastards to hit me. And a lot of the tournaments I've won is where I've gone out on that day and it's like, I don't care whether I win or lose, but those bastards aren't going to get any cheap shots on me today. And it's you've got to think about what you classify as how do you win your fight that day.
Nicholas.
So in the original question was, what is the most important aspect of the mental game, right?
Yes.
And if we apply that to how do we get good, comes down to training and setting realistic, accomplishable, and tangible goals for yourself that you are in control of. So like getting students away from saying, well, my goal is to, if they've been 2-0 in a double M, like, okay, this time I'm gonna go 3 rounds. I'm like, well, that's still not technically a tangible goal. You can't control how far in a tournament you're gonna go. So making sure that when you set a goal, it is something that you are 100% in control of.
Can you give us an example or two?
Sure. So instead of saying, you know, I'm going to win a tournament, again, not a tangible goal, a better goal would be, all right, in practice, I am going to fight 100 fights. That is something you are in control of, right? That is something that will help measurable growth.
Cool.
I'm going to pontificate a little bit because this is my area where I feel like I'm actually pretty decent at. So I say that you really need 3 things to win a tournament. The first one is you need to know yourself and pretty much know what your strengths and weaknesses are. And once you have that solid, like for a really long time when I had no knees, I did not back up. I turned that into a benefit rather than a negative. The second one, and this is where I disagree with Guido a good bit, is you have to know your opponent. I really do feel like knowing how your opponent is going to move and react, like what they're, and I agree with Davius, right? Having that Rolodex of this is how they usually go. And then there's also in the bell curve of fencing, right? There are 80% people where this is where how you know they're basically where they're going to fight. Now that tends to fail you at the higher end, but well, that's a different question. But then again, I also know, I know all you people and I watch you, right? So I'm going to watch you fight so that I will know what your tells are, what you like to do. And so I'll watch your videos, all of that. So I study my opponents as much as I study myself. And the last one on the mental game is I really feel one of the most important aspects of the mental game is controlling your adrenaline, right? Like it's too high or if it's too low, and you need to learn how to control that aspect of fighting. And once you get that, once you have control, the mental control over your own mind on that, there's a lot of then it's really, you're just going to win, in my opinion. I have video on how to get to the right adrenaline level, so I will not pontificate further on that. I'll just throw it in the video at some point in time. Nicholas has his hand up because he's polite.
So Deborah asked me, I hope you don't mind me making.
No, go right ahead.
Are you talking about SMART goals for practice? And so my source on this is The Mental Preparation of Fencing and Others. Really good book.
Wait, no. You have to tell us a little bit more about the book, who wrote it, and where can we get it?
Adelar A. Kogler, PhD, awareness-based concentrative analysis and mind fitness training. Right? So it talks a lot about the mindset while you train. I would like to read just a little bit. Instead of asking, what should I do against this opponent? Your main goal should be to steer your opponent into your most favorable, effective actions.
Mm-hmm.
Agree. All right. Did we have any art? One question is how valuable is visualization and what does that look like? Anyone? All right. We've got Guido got his hand up first, then Davius, and then I'll go around the room. Guido.
Visualization is vital. It's absolutely vital. I spend a great deal of time. So I'm a firm believer in being comfortable in everything you do. I try to practice in what I tournament in. I have 2 sets of the same thing, one for practice, one for tournament. They're pretty much identical. When I'm practicing or when I'm doing drill, I visualize an opponent, not in the way that a lot of people would think I do, but I visualize where I'm hitting. I'm visualizing the motion for control. I'm visualizing how a sword moves. Not so precise as to sort of train myself to react in a certain way, but more to realize the area that I need to control. So if my opponent is backing up, I need to visualize how am I going to advance on that. If they're backing up to the left, how am I going to advance on that? If they're backing up to the right, how am I going to advance on that? So visualization for me is absolutely vital. But when I fight, I'm a major proponent in the land grab. In a list field, I like to force my opponent into a corner where I have full motion and they don't. So I spend a great deal of time in trying to figure out and visualizing the method to isolate an opponent, force them into a corner, and make sure that they don't get to move and I get to control the fight from that point on. So for me, it's absolutely vital.
All right, I don't remember whose hand up was next.
Ibn.
Ibn. Okay. Ibn.
Visualization's one of the things you can also do on your own. And that's where it becomes really, really keen. There's actually been sports studies showing that, and it was done with elite athletes, but it actually apparently rolls down the stream even to our stuffers. If you visualize the technique, doing it right properly, that's actually equivalent to doing the drills, because you're setting the same neural pathways, because you're thinking about what you're doing. And what's actually happening is unconsciously, your body's doing the action while you visualize it. So what you're really sitting there doing is going, okay, this is what I want to do. And and not everybody can do this, because not everybody can do the image in their head. I think it's about 25 to 30% of the people can't visualize. They just physically can't do it. So if you can do it, it's a really, really good training tool and a really, really good way of understanding how you fight and how your actions do, and how to actually think about it when you're not sword in hand.
Who was the next one who had their hand up? Davius, were you up?
The visualization part for me, like you said, it's basically like practicing it. For me, it also helps, like, you see the visual cue of what you wanted to attack, or like the trigger for whatever you were trying to set up. Like, you get to see, when you in your head see the posture, the step, the lean, the weight transfer, whatever it is that you are used to seeing, that means it's go time for whatever you were trying to do. Practice that. You don't have to wait. It doesn't take as long to react. Like, you see it and you go, because because you've practiced. Whereas before, there's a lot of times where you have to, okay, I see now he's in between steps. His weight is in the middle. He can't go forward or back. Now I need to go do this thing. Whereas if you visualize it, at least for me, when I can visualize it, I see it over and over again, I can react to it faster. It just feels like when I've practiced it, when I've looked at it, when I've seen it, I can react to things quicker when I get what I wanted then. And that also shows me how, and that ties into, okay, I have the thing that I know I want to do. I have to give it, which means I have to do all these other things, right? So if you're visualizing yourself doing the thing that make them do the thing that lets you do what you wanted to do, once you put all that in your head, it happens faster than you having to register it, react to it, register the reaction, react to that. Because you've just now, is in your head, all of that is one thing. And it just happens instead of you having to go do it.
All right, who's next? Alan.
Visualization, that word for me is taking a whole bunch of separate things and putting it all together so it's one thought, and then my brain can go on to other things because I've already done these 6 together. I'm one of those people that wakes up about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the mornings and awake for an hour or so. When I was working on my Taekwondo belts, I'd lay there in bed and think through the katas, think through the forms. And when I got a chance to do them the next day, they'd locked in because I'd been through that one 10 times at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Or more.
As your fellow early waking insomniac, I feel you. Anyone else want to discuss this one? All right, yes.
Is that me? Okay, I don't visualize a lot, but I visualize when I'm working out what I need to drill. I'm visualizing a situation that comes up a lot for me or where I get hit a lot. So I'll just figure out what's happening and then I'll work out a drill I'm doing. So if I'm solo drilling, like imagining there's a lunge and I'm doing a step off line counter, I'm visualize that through a lot to go, what do I need to be doing? But when I'm doing like 20, 40 reps of that, I'm visualizing, I guess, like Davey has mentioned, like the trigger moment, and then just do the action. So
Right.
I'm letting go of the visualization when I'm drilling it because I need to be here in me. So I'm just visualizing the start, but I use the visualization to work out what I'm doing. But there's lots of cool ways of doing it, but personally, I don't visualize myself doing it a lot without sword in hand.
All right. Anyone else? Otherwise, I have another question. All right. So Giovanni has thrown a lovely question into chat, which is, what do you do to control the fight? And since I'm a host, I'm taking this one first. So there's two things that I do. Well, they're really just one thing. I mess with your head. Really is what I'm doing, is I'm messing with your head entirely 100% of the time. And I'm doing this through basically two ways. One, I'm trying when I start the fight, absolutely, and the rest of the time, primarily because I'm an aggressive fighter, is I am trying to throw you off your game and your timing by making it my timing that I like. So I will come in. I'm fine with coming in quick and fast. I feel like I have a really decent defense with my dagger, so I don't really worry too much about what you're throwing at me. So I will come in at a hard press, and that will throw some people off. The second thing I do to control the fight is I am absolutely throwing feints, and which, if you don't take it, I'm just going to hit you. So it's really, and it's usually not one feint. It is usually me trying to set up you to move the way I want you to move. So for example, I will shoot for like the hand. I'll watch you move your hand, and then I will come under and stab you in the center. That's usually my favorite happy, chewy moment right there. The other thing I like to do is I really like it when people will like just put their hand down like this. For some reason, my hand magically just goes right for the throat. Like just, I don't even have to think about it anymore. It just happens like that. So I will absolutely throw shots that will kill you if you ignore them, but the real intention is to get you to move your hand or your body the way I want it to move. All right, next, who else wants to? Giovanni, you're up because you asked the question.
So my biggest thing is mentally, it's my game. There's only there's only enough room in this stick head of mine for one person, and that's me. So mentally, I'm going to chew you up. I'm going to. There's an energy that I feel that a lot of fighters will put forward when they are the ones that are controlling the fight. Another big thing is measure. I've worked on my measure so much that I know where my sword placement is. I know where my measure is. And so I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'4". I've got big gorilla arms. And so I know where you are at the edge of my measure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and mentally, I'm going to be the one that's disengaging. I'm going to be the one that's getting the blade. I'm going to be the one that's fighting and trying to dominate your blade. And then when I've got what I want and I know where my measure is, it's when I'm going to throw my shot.
All right,
You're just a brute.
I am. I really am.
All right, Cernak, you're mouthing off, so you're up next.
Pressure. Pressure is number one. It's very like what you said, Eldora. Like, go for them. There's three things I want to do. I want to keep moving, so I'm not presenting a target for them to calculate on. I want to pressure them, which usually involves changing angle, measure, feinting, and then also measure cheats. I'm trying to get into their measure without them seeing it. And usually I'm doing that by throwing stuff at them, offering the feint by invitation, letting them move. So I just need a way to get at them. And often that's getting them to come at me. But mostly it's keeping active, not pressuring too much, not being too static, but just being annoying. And I like to take the space. Like if there's a field, I want to get into their corner and keep their back against the wall. So they've got that little distraction. So pretty similar.
Anyone else? Guido, and then Nicholas.
I like to keep my opponent uncomfortable. One of my favorite things to do is, I mentioned it before, I love the land grab on a list field. As soon as the marshal says lay on, the first thing I do is take a step forward into guard. Never back, never where I am, straight forward into guard. That gives me a little bit more space. Another thing I do is if I am out of measure, I will do things to sort of throw my opponent's timing off. I'll wave my sword back and forth across out into a long tail guard and then back into guard again. A lot of people are intimidated by that motion. I don't know why. I'm not allowed to hit you with it, but they don't like it. I have a major vision problem in that I can't tell depth. I have very poor depth perception. So another thing is I want to touch your sword. If I get to touch your sword, the fight is over. So I just reach out, I touch the sword, and then that's it. My sword is now glued to your sword. You don't get to do anything else except respond. So I like to dominate mostly. Like, it's really, I've been told I'm a bit of a jerk on the field when it comes to that, because I'll drop my sword on your sword and just, well, now we get to wrestle until you die. And another thing, there's a quick anecdote that sort of highlights this is in a Kingdom Rapier Championship. It was an open field, four different fields, and one individual, I one-shotted her right between the eyes, right from the start, walked to the next person I was going to fight and said, "You ready now?"
I want to fight you.
I
I try to get that sort of arrogance about it because it throws people, and I've been painted with that arrogant brush quite badly, and I accept that. I own that. It's all good.
It's not arrogance, it's confidence.
Yes. Almost to the point of arrogance, trust me. And if that's what it takes to keep my opponents on edge and keep them uncomfortable, then that's what I'm going to do. So it's about keeping my opponent uncomfortable and me comfortable.
I totally agree with that. Like, every good fencer I know, I love you all, I do, we're all tiny bit arrogant on the field. That's just the way yes, you all are. We all are. It is just a part of you have learned that you can dominate other people. And so we do. That's really a part of what we're doing. All right, Nicholas, you had your hand up.
I'd say knowing, part of the most important of being able to control a fight is knowing when you're not in control of a fight, and having a good response to reset or otherwise regain control of the fight. It could be something as simple as just taking a step back. Again, it's different per the situation, but what I've noticed in everyone's response is that, yeah, it's arrogance, but you also have to have confidence in what you're doing, and that may come off as arrogance, which is okay. We kind of need that. But as a fencer who wants to get good, like, yeah, you can't go into you can't go into a bout without any, you have to, pump up your arrogance, pump up your confidence, and then when you commit to an action, follow through on it. If you take the initiative on it, you've got, very good chance of pulling it off versus being the one who has to respond to it.
Alan had his hand up, then I'll go back to you. Gio.
Giovanni. Go ahead, Giovanni.
All right, Giovanni.
I just kind of wanted to add on to what Nicholas was saying. It's kind of that mental game, once again, is that if you go into a fight thinking, oh, man, I don't want to fight Davius, he kills me every single time, you right there already lost your fight.
Yes.
You were, so it's part of that confidence is, like I said, when I go into a fight, you're dead. It's murder time. I'm going to dominate this fight. But the second I go, oh, man, I don't want to fight him, that fight's already lost for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you. Anyone else on this one? All right. So it is 9:30 Illidor time. Okay, wait. Ibn Jalal, you go. What did you have?
One of the things I tend to do to dominate the fight is I just stick the point in someone's face because it disturbs them no end.
It's uncomfortable,
So
okay?
And No. It's literally you come on guard, point is the face, and I have literally had some people squeal and take 3 steps back just from the act of coming on guard. And it's like it's nothing more than, okay, here's my point, deal with it.
All right, so we're gonna ask. I'm gonna ask one more question, and then I think we're gonna wrap it up. So even though I saw Nicholas went to get his beer, so yeah, rub it all in, guys. I have to get up for work. Yeah, thanks, people. I have to get up for work early. So, and
Hey, sun's not over the yard arm here yet.
That's all right. People here are drinking, so you can drink there, right?
It's all good.
October.
So it's kind of what was your worst fight and what did you learn from it?
There have been so many.
That's all right. Pick one. Alan, you're up because you spoke. What was your worst fight and what did you learn from it?
I think the worst fights that I've had were the ones where I shouldn't have gone out there in the first place because something hurt too much, or I was just too beat, or I was too pissed at somebody. And I just shouldn't have gone out on the field. And then you question everything and you get the snot beat out of you.
Yep.
So I would say that's it. Fighting too tired or too something wrong. I should just walk away.
All right. Anyone else? Cyrnak.
I have a terrible fight for you.
Okay, great.
So this is about last year. It was actually a UK HEMA tournament, Rapier and Dagger. And I'm fighting someone who'd been fencing for like 3 months. And they just had really good form. They trained with a really good group. They knew what they were doing. And I just tried something kind of cheesy, fake high, go for the leg. They parry, they hit me. Crap. Okay, I go again. I did the same thing 6 times. 6 times, they hit me. So once it started going wrong, I got kind of like tunnel vision. And then I got conservative, so didn't want to try it, and I just got lost in the emotion at the moment. So I like impaled myself 6 times. And they were a solid fencer, but it shouldn't have happened. So what I learned from that, I learned that one of the most important things in my game is to be able to pull myself out of the situation and look at it and think, what am I supposed to be doing? To get tactical again, not to get lost in the shooting from the hip part of fencing. So it was painful, but I'm hoping I'm learning from that.
Guido, I think I saw your hand up.
Worst fight. So for the first 4 years of Kingdom Rapier Championship in Ontario, I went a solid 2 rounds in a double elimination. It was terrible. It was absolutely awful. And one day, the last time I did that, a 3 or 4 month fighter one-shotted me in the chest in the second round. And it was absolutely horrible for my ego. And then I suddenly made that sudden realization that I need to stop fighting at the perceived level of my opponent. And that's what I was doing wrong. I was analyzing my opponent by their sword, how they're dressed, how they're standing, and I was dropping to that level. No more. I actually had an apprentice standing at the other end of the list field from me at the beginning who would say to me, stop playing with your food.
Yeah. Giovanni.
So what I did was basically realize that a tournament is not a time for me to fight at the level of my win.
Tournaments are not practice. Giovanni.
So this one's kind of hard for me because the worst fight I ever had, and I'm kind of ashamed of it because I was in the finals of the Kingdom Rapier Championship. I had already won once, but I was fighting my Dawn at the time, and this was right before I was made a white scarf. And we both threw some shots that were a little bit questionable and should probably have been taken. And honestly, it was a public tournament that I am extremely embarrassed about. And it's one of those things where that was kind of one of those kick in the nuts because I was an up-and-coming fighter. I knew I was being talked about with the white scarves. I was a very, very cocky, teenager type of thing. And it was one of those where that was one of those fights that really, really, really humbled me and people's perception of me afterwards. And so, everybody's human. That's something that if, I try to be as clean and as honorable as I possibly can now. But at the time, there are going to be moments when you're in a tournament, especially in a high stakes tournament like that, where, your opponent starts maybe not taking some things, so you start not taking things. And the biggest thing is that will turn into the biggest shit show that you've ever been a part of. So that's the worst one for me, but I learned and I was humbled by that extremely.
That's a really great example. Nicholas, I think did you have one?
Come back to me. I'm still thinking.
Ibn Jalal?
Worst fight I ever had was a day where I shouldn't have gone on the field because it was too stinking hot. So it was mid-30s. 90 to 100?
Yes.
Okay.
People who work in sort of archaic measurements.
Period.
So it was like 100 plus fencing days. And Sydney's kind of like Florida. It's hot and humid. And we had one of those days. It's like we had like 86 yesterday and we've just come into spring. It's crazy. And it was like one of those days where I didn't have the right fencing gear for the type of weather I was in. I actually had my winter and spring stuff. I didn't have my summer stuff with me. And I should never have fenced because I was sick for the rest of the day. And it was just horrid. Yeah.
Davius, did you have one?
Mine actually came from back when I was just a little wee Davius. And it wasn't even that I felt bad. I hated the fights or whatever. I had moved out of Anstior maybe a year or two ago. And having been among the cadets there, we all fought each other. And, when you have a bunch of people who are at about the same level, you yardstick each other. You guys, measure each other. But I hadn't realized that I was one of the top people at that time. Like, I didn't get that. It wasn't in my head. So it was the end of it was Penzic, one of the end of the days, and I talked about how I was always on the field, until it was time to get off it. And I had been fighting for 10.5 hours, stupid like that, and was stumbling off. And one of my friends from Australia was like, "Hey, you got time for a few passes?" And I love defense, so I was like, "Sure, let's go." And he walked. I had nothing, and it didn't occur to me till later what a disservice I had done him, because at the end of that day, he went back thinking, "Hey, look, this is where I'm at with Davies," and because he spanked me at that point. But when people use you as a bar, you owe them to give them good fights, not just grab your swords because they wanted to fight you. And that was when I learned that I was one of the people who can't just fight because I love fighting. I have to be able to give a good fight, or else I'm hurting them. And that sounds cocky as hell. And I hate how it feels coming out of my mouth. But honestly, that is what it was. I put someone in a bad situation because I like them, right? And I've learned since then that look, if I don't have it, don't fight them. You can't give them bad fights because you're so and so, right? It's an extension of the problem at practice where you have the guy who keeps track of practice, who wins practice, and then thinks he's great now. Look, I went 50-50 with you at practice, and you're like, bruh, I had my 35 and a stick. What? No, I was trying something. But nobody learns from getting raffle stomped at practice. They don't get anything. I don't get anything.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to make sure that they understand that it's practice, and that if they, that they're not getting Queen's tournament, Queen's championship, Kingdom championship level fights from you, because it's practice, right? That's why I set aside some fights at every practice where I will give you A games. You can gauge that and see where you are. But normally practice, like, and it's for getting better. But yeah, like it started with Dale and Bilal saying like there's times when you just shouldn't go out there. You don't have it for whatever reason. Don't go out there. And it took a while to learn that I had a responsibility. I didn't realize I was. But yeah, that's super. Don't go out there.
My worst one I already talked about, which is where I got so wrapped up in what the next fight was going to be that I was an up and comer. This was a big tournament right before my first Pentic, and I was super excited about it. Like, I'm gonna go and I've been doing this for a whole year. I've gotten pretty good. I'm so excited, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take this against this person, this against that one, and I folded like a house of cards because I was just so overwhelmed and interested in trying to win that I was not concentrating on what was in front of me at the time, what I needed to do. And that was a really humbling moment for me. And that still sticks out as one of my biggest learning moments to this date. Nicholas, do you have anything for us?
I guess I could talk about the time I got my scarf. So I was in a tournament, I think this was a standard double limb, and unbeknownst to me, they had actually rigged it so that I wasn't supposed to be called up. They were actually going to interrupt the tournament before my first round and put me in the Meridian Order of the Blade. But then, like, I went and talked to the list person, like, hey, I think you guys skipped me, and like, oh, okay, well, we'll get you a buy fight, and you'll be in the next round. And so my buy fight was Gage, and he spanked me pretty soundly. I'm like, crap. Well, I'm glad that was a buy fight because that sucks. And then before the next round, they opened court. They're like the king queen came to the field and they opened court, and I was inducted. But just that initial, like, I was going to go into this tournament to win it. There was 6 yards of linen as the tournament prize, and the king was like, "Is it your desire to be inducted into this order?" And this tournament is all for non-scarves, for cadets and non-scarves. So I'm like, part of me was like, do I want to tell the king to come back in an hour? Because maybe
No, you're not. No.
Do it. See what happens.
Bad plan.
Wave that one off.
My fight.
That was good. That was a good one. I liked it.
Hey, I told the king no once.
Yeah, once.
No, it's because my mom wasn't there. So I want my
Oh,
mom to be there when I got the award.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
Yeah.
If my mom was coming, I would be like, yeah, that's my mom. Okay, this has been Get Gooder, the Face the Music, aka the musical episode. We did, in fact, have one musical question that everyone did answer. Mine was shameful, but I do not care. Anyways, we will absolutely be doing this again in the near future. Please feel free to send us any questions that you have, and know that we all miss you and really want to stab you real soon. So I want to stab all of you guys, but like all of y'all. So just letting you know, every single one of you. All right, thank you. Yeah, party on Wayne. Party on Garth. Nice to see you guys all. Yeah, stab. All right.
Thanks, folks.
Bye.
It's fun.
Guys, thank you all so much. This was lovely. Bye-bye.